Welcome into another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller along with Sam Ekstrom here. Sam, we are very close to the NFL draft. I have a question for you. What would earn the Minnesota Vikings an A from draft analysts everywhere who, after the draft is over, they fire out their draft grades and decide how well you've done? What type of haul would the Vikings have to bring in, or what boxes would they have to check to get an A from the draft analysts?
Well, I'll preface it with this. It doesn't take a lot to get an A from the analysts, especially when you have as many picks as the Vikings have. When they had 15 picks last year, it wasn't hard to cherry pick enough players that you liked to convince yourself that it was an impact draft. Here are the other things that would yield a high grade from fans and analysts. Addressing positions of need. If the Vikings make a luxury pick, it might be for an amazing player. Like if they get an awesome, like Micah Parsons linebacker, but that might knock them in some fans' eyes because that may not be someone they need right away. So I think you need to address the offensive line. That's probably going to resonate most with the fans because the fans have been harping on this for years. That's item number one. So checking that box, getting a defensive lineman, and then probably adding a cornerback and a safety along the way as well. I think that would give you all the necessary pieces to fill out your roster this year and into next year as well. And I think you want to add to your offense, maybe of the 11 picks, if you get 7 of them on the offensive side, that wouldn't be a bad thing because you kind of neglected it in free agency, to be honest, with no outside free agents brought in and one trade for a depth interior lineman who's not very good from Arizona. That's it. So give the offense a little TLC, and I think it won't be hard to woo the fans and get that coveted A grade.
Yeah, one thing that I would criticize about draft graders, and with all awareness of how sort of funny that is, like grading the grades, right, is just that they tend to overvalue in their grades players from day 2 and day 3 when they're trying to judge how well you did as a draft. So I'll give you an example. Last year, there was a lot of love for the Vikings pick of James Lynch. Now, the book is not written on James Lynch, but as of last year, he took 2 or 3 snaps. I mean, that's a 4th round draft pick. And sometimes they look at what they had for a big board and say, oh, well, I had him much higher, so this must be a bad pick. And I don't know if I necessarily love that logic. I mean, I also think that what usually determines a draft is your first 2 or 3 players that you end up taking. So last year, when they got Justin Jefferson, who is clearly tremendously talented, I agreed with all the people who gave them A's after that. And when they addressed some of their needs at cornerback within those first few picks and offensive line, I thought they really nailed it last year. And I think that's come to fruition, of course, with Jefferson. Jeff Gladney obviously has his issue, but Cam Dantzler and Ezra Cleveland both showed to be good prospects last year. And so I think that that's the way that I will judge it, is just what type of talent you brought in. And I'll also look to the 2022 depth chart on our website, purpleinsider.substack.com. I wrote out all the needs that they might end up having for 2022. And guess what, Sam? It's a lot. And so if they ultimately check off any of those boxes, which might mean a corner that I think would get an F- from some fans, but look at the 2022 depth chart. Look at what needs you might have there. You mentioned Micah Parsons. Like, look at the linebacker need that you might have if Anthony Barr leaves after this year. That's more how I will look at it. I totally agree with you that I think analysts tend to look at what immediate needs did you fill? And hey, which guy did I have higher on my board that you got in the 4th or 5th round?
Yeah, I think that if teams are looking for starters or immediate contributors on day 3 anyway, they've probably handled their offseason wrong. Like we shouldn't expect a lot out of day 3 picks aside from probably special teams early in the season, and some will get thrown in inevitably into the rotation, but odds are a lot of them aren't going to play. So you really can't judge their trajectory at all based on their rookie year for those day 3 picks. It's going to be who you get in the 1st round, who do you get with the 2 third-round picks. And then if you can add kind of a bonus pick, like someone who fell through the cracks and you get early in the 4th, that might be someone who can play right away. But, all told, you're right. It's going to be 3-4 picks that really judge the day. We're looking back, I think, at, the 2016 draft, like Laquan Treadwell being a bust in the first round, that kind of has a huge influence on the way we see that draft. Those picks just carry a lot of weight. You have to hit those, and that's kind of the way it is.
Let me ask you one other question. How about if the Vikings draft a quarterback at number 14? How do you think that fans and draft analysts will judge it? I'll give you my opinion. I think that would also earn them an A. At this point, even Kirk Cousins' biggest fans understand how his contract works and understand that, the future might not be Kirk Cousins, whether he even wants to sign a contract extension or just what he might be worth after a decent season next year to trade away. And plus, these top 5 quarterbacks are very, very good prospects. So I think that there would be a small portion of the fan base that would say, oh, you should have drafted an offensive lineman. But I think most understand kind of the circumstance of where this team sits, and they would get very high grades for that.
Yeah, and the caveat is obviously it has to be one of the top 5. You're not going to applaud a Kyle Trask or a Kellen Mond at number 14, but we've been convinced over the past several weeks by all of the leaks, all of the reports, all the speculation, to some degree, that all of these 5 quarterbacks are top 5 worthy. Like, all of their names have been thrown about. So I think based on the perception, if a quarterback who's been considered top 5 falls to number 14, that seems like tremendous value to me and probably to the fans as well. So that would be amazing, and also probably pretty unrealistic the way things are going. Like, I don't know if these quarterbacks are going to last past pick 9. It just seems like everybody is in the mix, and maybe they're all just posturing, trying to find trade partners. But I would be stunned if the Vikings were in that position. And I don't think they have the arsenal to move up and get one either. So I would be floored if the Vikings wound up with a first-round quarterback.
I would be surprised as well, but it does seem like every year there's that one quarterback who's hyped up that maybe the league didn't quite agree with. And sometimes that quarterback turns out to be like Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes that the guy who drops ends up being pretty good. So this is another Purple Insider Extra. Make sure you listen to the podcast wherever you get your pods. Purple Insider, just type it in or use the link below, and check out purpleinsider.substack.com and enjoy the draft, everyone. It'll be fun.